This might just be one of the most horrifying stories you would have ever heard. The St. Kizito boarding school tragedy that happened in 1991, where 271 female students aged between 14 and 18 were attacked, beaten, gang raped, and killed by their male students. All 306 of them. Let me rephrase. 306 boys in a boarding school attacked their female students, beat them, raped them, and had them killed in just one night. This is one of Kenya's darkest moments in history. A crime so unbelievable and tragic, and one up to this day, 32 years later and counting, no single one person was held responsible or no one was punished for this devilish act. Although the school itself was shut down, but it was said they reopened many years later with a different name. But as far as St. Kizito Secondary School was concerned, that incident was the end of it. All that's left of St. Kizito is the tragic moment in history that it left behind on the 13th and 14th of July 1991. So what happened that day? How and why did the boys of St. Kizito decide to wake up one night to attack their girls, having nearly 18 of them killed and 71 of them raped, with many others injured to the point they had to be rushed to the hospital? Were these boys suddenly possessed by demons? Even those who had siblings and cousins and relations in the girls' hostel still did not show mercy. It was this bad, and we are going to talk about it right now. But before we continue, if you like what we do here on this channel, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. You can also turn on the notification button. Should there be any future updates, you'll be the first to get notified. Now, let's get a brief background on St. Kizito. This was a boarding school that was set up in the 60s in Meru County, Kenya. The school was set up for only boys. It was an all-boys boarding school in the 60s. However, 10 to 15 years later, in the 70s, they began admitting female students into the school, making it a co-educational school, a mixed school for what it's worth, with boys and girls, separate hostels, a shared dining hall, shared prep hall, and I think shared classrooms too. It was only the hostels that weren't shared. Now, another thing you need to put in mind is that this is a public school. This is somewhat a government school. So a lot of the students of the school were children of middle class to low income earners. They were not particularly from wealthy homes. Not many of them were, to put it as such. And the school itself was underfunded. It was not properly funded. And it was, one of those schools that was usually open for corruptions where fees and budgets are misused and all of those things that affects politics. And it was due to this underfunding of the schools, not just the school itself, there were other schools in the Meru County and thereabouts that are boarding schools too, and they were also affected by the underfunding. And unfortunately, this underfunding of these schools would play a very big role in the event that was to take place on the 13th of July 1991. Now, weeks before the incident happened, months before it, terms before it, the boys and girls of St. Kizito were expecting inter-school games, not inter-house sports per se, but a sport that would involve other schools in the county where they would all meet, play, and win a prize. So this was a common event that takes place on a regular. I guess it was like the Olympics of boarding schools in Kenya at the time, and the students of St. Kizito were expecting it. Both the boys and the girls, they were all looking forward to it. They were speaking with their friends from other schools. They were already practicing. Some of them were preparing for it. It was an event they were looking forward to, as most schools do even up till this day. After many months of preparation, in July, these kids got to learn something that would shock them. They got to find out that their school did not pay the necessary fees that was required of them to participate in these inter-school sports with the other students in Meru County. And they were shocked and surprised. What this means is that they were not going to compete. Their dreams, their plans, their preparation seems like it's going to waste. Seems like everything that they've hoped for and bragged about to their friends in other schools, it's all going to the gutters, it's all going to the trash. And they did not want it to happen because they really wanted to participate in the competition. And this news, as ironic as it seems, was the next trigger that would lead to the event of the 13th of July 1991. The fact that these students learned that they would not compete in the inter-school competition in the county would be the major trigger that would lead the boys to launch an attack on their girls. And you may be wondering, how does this concern the girls? Like, how did it get to the girls? I mean, is the school board, the school principal, the school authorities, the people in charge of the funding or in charge of the finances of the school that should have paid these fees and did not pay the fee that should be attacked. So why did the boys go for the girls? What kind of weakling move is this? What did the girls do? The girls did nothing. And as funny as it is, the fact that the girls did nothing was the main reason why the boys attacked them. This is so surreal because when you look at it, it's a very cowardly move. Like honestly, you guys, I know you're expecting something that the girls did that would be big or something, but they didn't do anything. I'm going to finish the story, but I just want to prepare your mind for the disappointment because this was sheer bullying. This was clear gender-based violence at the highest or lowest in this case, since these are all secondary school students. This was the point where you're like, really? Because you guys are boys and you think you can do this to the girls, that's why you did it? That is it. Because the girls did nothing, that was why the boys attacked them. But there were things that may have happened that maybe the girls had implied or triggered in the boys, and we will talk about it. Hopefully this would help you understand a little bit of what, I don't know, should I say, the girls may have done, or in this case, not done. Sometimes the lack of action is an action itself. But before we get into that details, I want you all to understand the atmosphere in Kenya at this time, maybe in Meru County at this time. So this was 1991. So don't use your 2021 or 2022 lens to look at it. This is 1991. Even though I don't know what difference this would make though. But in this period of time, boarding schools were mostly underfunded. Remember I told you it's not just the St. Kizito school that was underfunded. There were other boarding schools in the county that were underfunded. Some schools were dealing with a lot of losses. Some schools were not getting some services. Some schools were going through certain things too in their own personal schools that were equally government or maybe federal. I don't know how that works in Kenya. But the school then at the time in 1991 and around that period of time, a lot of the schools were going through stuff. A particular school had not had water for a very long time. They had to leave their school compound to go to the community to fetch water. And the students in those schools held a protest and held a strike and stopped going to classes, stopped doing their regular activities. Some even said that they were going to go home until the government provides water for their school. And they got their water after they held their strike. Another school was going through the problem of their food. The quality of their food was bad. And it was consistent. They were feeding them sport food, poorly cooked food, sometimes even no food. Sometimes they were eating once or twice a day. Sometimes they were hear no food, no lunch or no dinner or no breakfast. And that particular school also held their riots and held their protests and held their strike. It was said they even attacked a cook, the chef in the school, and threw her into the pot of whatever rubbish food that she may have cooked for them then. So these schools were making headlines for protesting and standing their ground against the authorities in their schools that were in charge of providing these services. And for every strike and protest that they held, these schools were receiving success. I don't know if you get where I'm going to now. So there were other schools who had other issues, and it was kind of like a thing to hold strikes in these boarding schools. Whenever they weren't getting a particular kind of service, they would hold a protest, they would hold a strike and cause a commotion. And the school government or the school board will hear their cry and fix their problems. So that was the atmosphere. And coming to St. Kizito Secondary School now, the students realizes that, okay, this school board are not listening to us. Some of them, the head boys and the big boys in the school would go and meet the principal to beg, please sir, please pay for this sports. They were begging, they were trying their best to get the authorities to pay for the sports so that they could participate, but their principal was strong-willed and strong-headed and refused. And at the point, it was clear to them that no matter what they did or how they begged, the school authorities had made up their mind. The sports and the competition was not going to happen. So they had one thing left to do, which was to hold a strike, hold a protest, like all the other schools in the county. Refused to go to classes, refused their labor, their regular boarding school activities. Some were even going to riot, make noise, yell, and sing, and do these things so that the school can finally heed to their requests. So around that period in July, the boys began spreading their brochure. They would give it to everybody. So at that period of time, the boys and the girls were all in this. Was like, at least the boys thought they were all in this together, and they had agreed on the time that they were supposed to start their strike, stop attending classes, don't go to dining, refuse everything, and cause chaos so that the school can finally listen to them. But to the surprise of the boys, the girls did not partake in their strike. It fell on deaf ears. The girls continued their daily routine. The girls went to classes. The girls were doing their normal activities. And at this point, it was now clear to the boys that they were alone in this. The said Kizito boys realized that, oh, wow, these girls are not with us. They are not supporting us. They are not protesting for us. Obviously, sport favors guys more. I can see from the girls' point of view that they weren't interested. Honestly, they weren't. So why should they hold strike for the boys, for a sport that they wanted more? And maybe in the girls' defense, if the boys really wanted it, they should protest. And if you look at it very well, personally, if you ask me, the boys alone could have done this by themselves. They did not need the girls. But this is actually the problem. The girls were sort of powerful in a way. The girls at the time had the key that they needed. This may be shocking to you now, but in 1991, it was kind of a norm in a way that was still a crime, but popular knowledge. A lot of the girls, a lot of the big girls, a lot of the tough girls in the school were involved with the teachers and principal and authorities of that school. I don't know if you get what I mean. So these boys knew that some of the girls were sleeping with teachers for grades, for powers, for special treatments. And some of them even had connections with the principal because womanizer, and all of those bits. So this was the era where these things were happening in schools, and it was kind of a norm. It was wrong. If you're caught, you'll be punished. But if the student agreed to keep it quiet, who's going to file charges? No one. So the girls had that power, and the boys knew it. And the boys were banking on it. But to see that the girls suddenly turned on them, refusing to join their strike, not even adding their voice, not joining them to protest, they felt very betrayed. And on the 13th, the day this incident happened, I guess it was the last straw for the boys. At this point, I guess they now saw that the girls were deliberately snubbing them or spiting them or deliberately refusing to join the protest just to maybe show them that they are the baddest, or I don't even know. Because ordinarily, girls had the right not to participate in the strike. But it was almost as if to the boys, the girls just wanted to show them that without us, you're nothing, for some weird reason. That is how a lot of the boys may have perceived it. So, on the 13th of July 1991, in the evening, after the lights out and everything, this was around 9 p.m. towards 10, the boys started their vocal riot. They came out of their hostels, all 307 or 6 of them, beating drums, making noise, singing, chanting. No one of those do this for us, and all of those beats. They were trying to start their physical riot, other than the boycotting of classes, refusing to do duties, or refusing to do homeworks. Other than that, they now felt it was time to be vocal, be riotful, cause commotion in the school, and get the school authorities to listen to their prayer. So when they came out of their hostel, 9, 10, 11, the girls weren't coming out to join them. Maybe if the girls came out, it would have been better, but seeing what happened after, I don't blame the girls for not coming out. I don't. Because these boys were clearly monsters. And this was night. Why would they want to hold a protest in the night? First of all, how smart is that? Maybe if they had done it in the daytime, the girls may have joined. But they decided to do it in the night, around 9. This may not have been said. Maybe this is just me using my head. I feel the boys had ulterior motive to push their riot towards that 9th time. It wasn't going to favor the girls in the end. I feel like whatever had happened because the girls did not join them in their riot still happened if the girls joined them in their riot at that time of the night. This was 300 guys to 271 girls, outnumbered by a lot, even in strength and in power. Don't forget, these are ages between 14 to 18 years. There were even those who were 13. So obviously, the girls choosing not to come out of their dormitories, come out of their hostels to join the boys in their chanting and singing was justified in all ramifications, if you ask me. Maybe they should have held it in the daytime, like I said. So the boys were chanting, making noise, and yelling. The girls were not coming out of their hostels. The boys were seeing it. So wow, so these girls really mean business. So they're not going to come out to support us. They started becoming very aggressive. They started making it clear that they are coming for the girls. They started moving towards the girls' hostel. Now, the girls' hostel had about 3 separate buildings, but there was a bigger one, a bigger hall. So the other girls from the 2 smaller hostel buildings were pushed by their head girl and their senior prefect to the big hall. They were like, all the girls came together into one hall that usually hosts over 100 of these girls. So now, in that hall, there were now 271. All the girls in the school were now in that single hall. It was a way to keep them safe. They felt, okay, see, this is getting aggressive. These boys are acting crazy. Some of them seemed to have been drunk. This is 1991. I'm sure they could easily get alcohol from anywhere. Some of them seemed to have been high, and it's looking like it's going to go wild. It's almost as if the girls knew what was coming, because they quickly all came together into one hostel, barricaded the hostel, pushed their bunks to the door, locked it with padlock, get their lockers. It was like a horror movie, a zombie apocalypse. They saw it coming and they were preparing to protect themselves. While they were there, the boys cut the lights to the school, cut the power supply to the telephone lines then, which means the school authorities could not make phone calls. The girls could not see. It was pure darkness, and they were all in the mercy of these boys. This is a nightmare. This is horror. The girls in their hostels were squeezing at each other. The boys began throwing stones at their hostel windows, their doors, big stones. And I think their building at the time was made with bricks, one of those buildings that maybe one stone could break through. I'm not particularly sure how it was in 1991. Through research, it made it look like the buildings were somewhat fragile, because when the boys started throwing stones, they were getting into the hostel. Some girls were hit with stones. Their windows were broken with stones. This was a full-fledged attack. The boys came to the doors and began banging the door, matching it with their feet, throwing stones at it, trying to get it open. All the while, all 271 of these girls in St. Kizito were squeezed up and praying for their lives, because they don't know what these boys had turned into. Frankly speaking, being in their shoe, I would have passed out. And as it so happened, many of the girls passed out. Soon afterwards, the boys were able to break into their hostel. Some of the girls were dragged to the open field where a group of boys had their way with them. Over 71 girls were brutally and physically assaulted by gangs of this. This is 300. Do you know what 300 boys? 300 boys. 300 boys, some of them on drugs and on alcohol. Some of them, and these are all between 14 and 18. This is where hormones are raging. So you can imagine the level of assaults that these girls would have faced in the hands of these boys. And we only know it's 71 girls because these are the ones that were mostly obvious or the ones that came forward. There was still stigma then, so imagine the ones that did not speak out. There's a possibility that more girls were physically and sexually assaulted by these boys, but record has it to be 71 or thereabouts. Some of the girls were beaten, some were dragged, and through sources it was said that some girls were targeted. Maybe those girls that the boys knew had relationships with teachers and principals and the authorities were the ones that were mostly targeted, and also the ones that they maybe had crushes on, or the ones that they've been asking out and had refused. And this was a good time. This was an opportunity for the boys to be the monsters that they were trained to be, because only God knows where they got this idea from, to attack and forcefully have their way with their female students. So a lot of people will be wondering, where was the school security? What was the authorities doing at the time? What was happening? Where were the security men? Where was the principal? Where were the teachers? And this is St. Kizito, so it's some sort of like a Catholic school in a way. There was a reverend father somewhere around the vicinity. There were teachers in the school. Where were all of them? So what we know about the security team of the school was that they had 2 night watch, 2 guards that carried bow and arrow. I kid you not. The security men of the school were using bow and arrow. I want to give them the excuse that this was 1991, but no. I mean, if they had a baton, I would understand, but bow and arrow, what were they protecting the kids from? Bushmeats? And the security team, they claimed that they could not do anything. They could not stop the boys because the boys were 300 and they only had bow and arrow. That the boys even chased them away and threw stones at them. Obviously, what were you going to do with a bow and arrow to contain 300 raging, horny, angry boys? Come on. And it was said the police was actually 15 minutes away. The police in the county was actually 15 minutes away. And they reached out to the police and told the police of what was going on. This was long before the boys even attacked the girls hostel. When the boys were raging, the police were even getting called. And this was what the police said. This was according to sources. The police were like, oh, they heard about the incident, but they could not come because they did not have fuel in their car. But they had to patrol. I don't even know what that means. They had to patrol the area to make sure. I guess maybe they thought whatever was happening in the school should stay within the school. They were just patrolling to make sure students were not outside in danger, not knowing that the real danger was happening inside the compound. Maybe they did not know what was going to happen. Maybe the school authorities did not communicate to the police where that, see, these boys are going to attack the girls. Maybe they would have patrolled inside the school. Maybe they would have been outnumbered, but at the same time, it would have been nice for the police to have showed up. I mean, with one bullet or one gunshot in the air, I'm sure these boys will behave themselves or run away at least. And this would most likely save the girls. So this night of terror started from the Saturday the 13th into the 14th on a Sunday. 12 midnight, 1, 2, 3, this attack was still going on. The girls were being brutally assaulted. About 18 of them had already died. The rest were injured, running helter-skelter, trying to save their own lives. It was horrific. And by the time all this was done, the boys all ran away. The boys fled. They left the school compound. All the boys left. They had done what they wanted to do. The next morning, this was news. 18 girls from St. Kizito boarding school were found dead, piled up on top each other in their hostel dormitory. 71 of them in poor condition, indicating that they had been sexually assaulted. Many of them injured, some of them traumatized. And this became big news. This became the biggest news there was at the time in July. This was one of the most shocking tragedies in Kenyan history. The next morning, the girls who were victims were taken to the hospital for treatments. The ones who died were taken for autopsy. And although rumors were that these girls who died were raped to death, but through autopsies, it was learned that the girls who died all died from suffocation due to the fact that they were all clustered together and due to the fact that there was a stampede when the boys eventually broke into the hostel. Some of them were stepped on. A lot of them, suffered from the bunks falling on them, lockers, feet, and the heat and lack of oxygen in a hall containing over 200 human beings, with windows and doors locked shut. This was a horror. So it became popular knowledge that the ones who died were not particularly raped to death, but it was due to the actions of the boys that caused it. Now, who were the boys? The girls who remember names called names. Eventually, 30 to 32 or 40 of the boys were called in by the police. They were arrested and taken to court. And I don't think any of them even got punished, because during the whole court proceedings, the boys were taking pictures. I mean, what are you going to do? It was said that some of the boys used bed sheets to cover their faces and had flashlights when they attacked the girls. So it was really hard to tell who was who, even though they should know that 300 boys did it. However, what do you do with 300 boys? How do you arrest and charge all 300 boys for doing this? You would have to be specific on who did what and what was done. And I think that was a problem with this case and this story, and that is why many of the girls did not get their justice, even up till this day. Now, of everything regarding the aftermaths of this case, how the press reacted when the president at the time heard it, and how they all dealt with it and managed the situation to see if they could even compensate the families, the deputy principal of the school, by the name of Joyce Kitira, made one of the most controversial statements in history. In fact, when you think of the Kizito secondary school boarding school tragedy, you will think of this statement that I'm about to call for you. In fact, this statement is way more popular than the incident itself, because it is the most senseless, shocking, and unusual statement a principal of a school where a group of girls had just been raped would say. Funny enough, I can explain her statement better for you guys, even though I won't be justifying it, but I can explain it. When the school authorities were asked to address the nation, address the president of what really happened, the deputy principal, Joyce, went on national television to tell the whole world, and I quote, "The boys never meant any harm against the girls. They just wanted to rape." That is it. This is what the principal of the school, a female principal for that matter, said, trying to defend or justify what the boys had done, and the whole world at the time was dumbfounded. What? The boys did not mean any harm, they just wanted to rape? What does that even mean? The boys throwing stones at the girls' hostel does not mean any harm. Even the act of rape itself meant harm. What is she saying? Anyway, If there's any consolation, she was fired. I mean, the school was closed down, but she was fired from getting any government job at the time. She was dismissed. It was not until 2018 that it was said she apologized for her statements. Clearly, at the time, maybe she didn't get enough backlash because the internet wasn't there to hear it and drag her by her left eyelashes. Because if that was the era of Twitter or Facebook or social media, she would have been dragged by her pubic hairs around the whole world. But the thing now is, or the sentiment here is, when you look at her statement, when I looked at it, I kind of understood what she was trying to say. Like it's been said, it doesn't matter what you're trying to say. What matters is how you say what you want to say. And I guess she said it the worst way possible. Not to defend the boys or not to defend the act. This is me just trying to explain why the deputy principal Joyce made that statement. Because it's still part of the background of this whole tragedy. First thing first, yes, the girls who died were not directly killed by the boys. And it was confirmed that none of the girls who died was raped. Which means they all died of the suffocation and the combustion and the whole stampede, which was still caused by the boys. But it was a popular knowledge or popular word that the girls were raped to death. So that was what was widely believed then, that these boys raped these girls and killed them and murdered them directly. So that was what was believed or widely spread at the time. Not until the autopsy came out, but not many people got to know about the autopsy because people did not follow the news then. There was no internet, so they heard what they heard and believed what they believed and carried it on for years. And the reason why the principal made that statement was because she knew that rape, for what is what, was common in the school. I don't know if you get what I mean. It was a common and public knowledge that these students were involved with their teachers and their older people. And if you look at it, these are minors and these are adults. And even though the students are agreeing or giving consent in exchange for marks or special favors or food or special treatment, it's still rape in its sense. And the deputy principal knew about it. She knew about the girls sleeping with the principal. She knew about the girls sleeping with the teachers for marks. She knew about what was going on. She knew about it. And she understood that that was a common practice. That was a common thing that was popular. Teachers who were caught were arrested and punished. Those who were not caught got away with it. I don't know if you get. So I guess she, in an attempt to try to explain that the boys did not mean to kill the girls, they only just wanted to do what the teachers were doing to the girls. I don't know if that even helped you guys understand it, because now I'm thinking of it, it's still not giving what it was supposed to give. I'm trying to help understand what she meant or where she was going by that statement, even though it still doesn't justify what she said or what she meant by that. It was one of the most horrible. In fact, when I read it, I was shocked. I was like, is she crazy? Is she mad? But then when you look at the context of what was going on at the time, she was basically just saying boys with boys. The boys wanted to just get, and they were angry and they wanted. But when you look at the full story, this was a full-fledged attack on the girls. This was an unprovoked attack that was launched at the girls. The girls did not do anything, and it cost them a lot. It was said the school was immediately dissolved. It was ended, exams did not hold. Everybody go to your house, go to new schools, register for your final exams there. As far as St. Kizito boarding school is concerned, it's over, it's dissolved. Even though it reopened many years later as St. Cyprian Boys School, I guess it was not St. Kizito, and I guess maybe with new principal and new officials, St. Kizito history will forever remain St. Kizito history. I guess that's the best way to avoid the scandal. So that was the story of this St. Kizito boarding school tragedy. This was a very horrific incident that happened nearly over 30 years ago. One that many of the victims are still alive till this day. Many of them even held interviews remembering it. And I guess many of them had to just move on. Everyone just had to move on. It's not clear where some of the boys were. It's not clear who they were. Some of the boys are still alive till this day. They are all fathers now and men in the community. I don't think any of them would admit to doing it. None of them would say, "Oh, it was me. I was the one." It's over. It's past. They had to just deal with it and heal with it. The boys that were arraigned in court got away with it, and that was their luck. Maybe now that they are fathers to daughters that they would send to school, they will just have to keep praying to their God that history doesn't repeat itself and karma doesn't come back to bite them in the ass. Was it worth it to do these things to the girls, all because of a sport that you didn't get to participate in? Was it really worth it? So guys, that is it. This is the story of the St. Kizito boarding school tragedy. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know how you feel. I would like to know where you're watching from. And if you're from Kenya and you've heard about this story and maybe there are some details that we may have missed, do let us know in the comments below if you're directly affected by this incident or you know someone in your family who may have. Let us know a few stories or how it affected them or how they dealt with it many years later. Share your stories, share your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, share with your friends, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and turn on notification button should there be any future videos. You'll be the first to get notified. Thank you guys for watching.